Let me hit you with this. The biggest event in your life are the events that has really and truly shaped you. Probably and most likely those things you never expected them to come. Am I right? Well, it is probably and most likely be the same with money. And that is what this chapter is all about. Today in this video, I will be talking about chapter number 12 from the book called The Psychology of Money. The chapter titled is Freedom, and it elaborates the idea that how the biggest financial events are the ones that no one saw coming, and why preparing for uncertainty is much beneficial than predicting the next future. And this chapter also takes a dive into one of the most humbling truth about success, wealth, investing, and life itself. Mr. Morgan in this chapter says, the most important event in the history are outliers. They are the tails event, the black swan, the surprises. And my key takeaways from this chapter are the most impactful financial events are surprises. Certainly they are not in any forecast or in a business model. Economies are made more on black swan pattern than a regular pattern. Most people plan on history, but history is the wrong tool if you do not account for how surprising it can get at times. The world is complex and irrational, so expect the unexpected. Don't build a plan on what usually works. Build a plan that can survive what never happened. The goal is not to predict. The goal is to be resilient when you are wrong. And with that, let's take a deeper jump into my keynotes. The lesson number 1, which I took from this chapter, it is the biggest financial shocks were never in forecast. Mr. Morgan in this chapter explains how the big market crash of 2008 to the housing crash towards the COVID-19 or even back then in the Great Depression. These things were no one's predictions, and nobody expected it to come the way they came. Mr. Morgan says history is useful for learning how people behave, but it is a terrible forecast to predict the future. And that is why history is clean in a hindsight, but in reality, it is messy, it is emotional and full of surprises and variables. And yet, no one talks about it because most of the financial advice that we are being given by others is built on what usually happens. And with that, it brings me to the next key takeaway from this chapter, which is where it gets dangerous. Many financial advice is usually built on what usually happens, but that is not what changes the game. It is the stuff that no one expects. The pandemics, the war, the tech bombs, the market crashes, the housing crash, and those things is what reshapes everything. And Mr. Morgan says the majority of what is happening in the economy at a given time is the result of a handful of past surprises that people did not plan for. We have to have this understanding that we do not live in an average world. We live in a world full of extreme. So when you're planning a plan, keep that in mind. Cause if your plan cannot survive the unexpected, it is not a good plan. And with that, it brings me to the next key takeaway from this chapter, which is build for resilience and not perfection. When you read this chapter, you get the idea that Morgan does not want you to predict the next crisis. Mr. Morgan, he simply is trying to tell you that when you're making a new plan for yourself, make sure that it can at least survive the unexpected crisis that it might have to face. And how you do that is, before making a plan, you must have emergency funds, low expenses, also margin of error of some point, and the most important, make sure you have your security net. Also, you have to have humility to understand that I don't know everything. And Mr. Morgan says, a plan is only useful if it can survive a reality. And reality can often, at times, can be wild. And with that, it brings me to the next key takeaway from this chapter, which is we suck at predicting. Let me be very, very honest with you. No one has the foresight. No one believed we could fly until we did. No one predicted that smartphones will consume the world. No one predicted that there would be a 0% interest rate for more than a decade in America. No one plans for the market crash. No one can prepare for a global lockdown and meme coins in the same year. Morgan reminds us by saying you have to give yourself room of error because the biggest risk is always that you don't see coming. And that is not fear. It is just freedom. And with that, it brings me to the final takeaway from my notes, which is don't predict, get prepared. What Morgan is trying to say to me while I have read this chapter is that I have to stop predicting the world and stop forecasting the next future and start building a life that can bend without breaking. Because the biggest opportunities are surprises, and the biggest threat to your money will also come off as a surprise. So, when preparing for a plan, make sure your plan can at least take the hit if the world is going against your plan. That should be your strategy, because sure in hell, that is what my strategy is gonna be going forward. And with that, it brings me to the end of this video. What a beautiful chapter this is. And if you ever felt that the world is too unpredictable to plan for, I don't think you are wrong. Do let me know of your strategy in the comments and what did you learn from my keynotes and what you could share of your strategy to me. And let me know if you have lived through a financial surprise that you never saw coming and how did you survive it. Knowing from my experience, everything has a price in this world. We either pay it through time or money, but everything comes at a cost.